Hello BookTube, welcome back to my 2025 library tour. In this episode, my writing and art books. This is the most static part of my collection. I have not added any new writing or art books since I started this channel, nor have I gotten rid of any. Although after this video and this library tour, that will hopefully change. Anyway, let's get going. First up is The Anatomy of Story by John Truby. I've heard a lot of great things about this book from various writers here on YouTube and BookTube, but I have myself not read it. I probably need to either correct that or get rid of it. Nor have I read Creating Character Arcs by K.M. Wayland. I have read Dynamic Characters by Nancy Kress. This is fairly okay when it comes to character creations, although exactly how useful it has been, I don't know. Another book that I actually read is The Ultimate Guide to Video Game Writing and Design by Flint Dial and John Zur Platten. This is pretty interesting if you're interested in writing for video games. And it does have an interesting character creation and organization creation sheet. Back to the book that I have not read. I have not read Breathing Life into Your Characters by Rachel Ballin. Nor have I read The Essential Guide to Getting Your Book Published by Errol Eckstedt and David Henry Sterry, who are on YouTube as the Book Doctors, although I don't know if they have really updated their channel in several years. I was subscribed to them for a long time, but about 2 or 3 years ago I unsubscribed and I haven't really kept up with them since. But I probably either need to read this or get rid of it. Back to the book that I have read. This is Wonder Book by Jeff Vandermeer. This is about how to write basically like Jeff Vandermeer. It is very interesting and very cool. The style of the book, the illustrations, they're all really neat. And I actually quite like it. Next is Beginnings, Middles, and Ends by Nancy Kress. Have not got to it. The next batch I have gotten to. This is The Art of Subtext by Charles Baxter. This is The Art of Perspective by Christopher Castellani. The Art of Description by Mark Doty. And The Art of Intimacy by Stacey D'Erasmo. These little books by Grey Wolf Press are meditations on the various subjects. And they're quite good. They're fairly good bits of criticism, not necessarily wanting to write. And I probably should rehouse these with literary criticism. What little of that I have. It's maybe over here. Next is, and back to the books that I have not read, this is Crafting Novels and Short Stories from the editors of Writer's Digest. I have read The Guide to Writing Fantasy and Science Fiction by Philip Athens. This is pretty good. Philip Athens has a blog that I'm blanking on its name, and I think he has a YouTube channel as well that in the last year or two. Not subscribed to it though. Next is The Fantasy Fiction Formula by Deborah Chester. Not a huge fan of this book. Even less fan of Deborah Chester's fiction. The Elements of Style by William Strunk. Have not gotten to it yet. Putting the Science in Science Fiction, or Putting the Science in Fiction, edited by Dan Cobalt. Not terribly good. On Writing on World Building, Volume 1 by Timothy Hickson. This is a book form version of Timothy Hickson's YouTube channel, Hello Future Me, where Hickson will take various elements of story and tropes and break it down using various science fiction, fantasy media, fiction, live action, film or television, and animation. It's fairly interesting, but at the same time, it's also very too mechanistic, I think. Honestly, you are better off just watching his YouTube channel than reading the book. Next is On Writing Horror, edited by Mort Castle. I picked this up, or got this from one of my cousins when his mother came to visit a few years ago. I'm not entirely sure why he was getting rid of a lot of his books, but he was, and I'm assuming he thought seriously about writing horror. And I also got from that same cousin Stephen King's On Writing, which I dipped into many years ago. Not too impressed with it. So that was my writing books. Now on to my art books. First up is Bridgman's Complete Guide to Drawing from Life. This is one of the standard textbooks for figure drawing. And I know a number of comic book artists highly recommend it, especially I think David Finch, who his recommendation is to pretty much draw, and I think several other artists' recommendation is to basically draw and draw and draw every illustration in this book until you get good at it. I also have How to Paint Figures in Pastel by Joe Singer, which is pretty neat. I love the illustrations in here. Also by Joe Singer is How to Paint Portraits in Pastel, which also like a lot of the illustrations for, especially, well, yeah, so that's pretty cool. Also have Pastel Pointers by Richard McKinley, which has a lot of interesting artwork in here, and also has a really good chapter on how to be a professional artist, which very few writing or art books have that in there. Sticking with pastel, I have Painting Brilliant Skies in Water and Pastel by Liz Haywood Sullivan. Liz Haywood Sullivan is one of my favorite artists, and this is a pretty cool book. Back to drawing with Drawing Human Anatomy by Giovanni Givardi. Another drawing book if you're interested in figure drawing and I guess comic book illustration is Dynamic Figure Drawing by Bern Hogarth. Back to pastels with Pastel for the Serious Beginner by Larry Blovitz. The Art of Pastel Painting by Alan Flatman. Pastel Painting Techniques by Guy Rodin. And finally, back to drawing with Drawing the Male Figure by Joseph Shepard. So that was my art and writing book collection. I'm probably going to keep most of my art books, and I'll probably have a longer look at my writing books as I find some place to put them, because right now I really don't have any place for either one, and probably get rid of a good chunk of my writing books. Anyway, BookTube, I will be back with another episode of my 2025 library tour tomorrow, so look forward to that. Anyway, BookTube, until then, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.